Well, hello there, people. How are you on this September 11th? Never forget. I don't know how you could possibly forget, given that we're now 19 years later and every day is suffused on the anniversary with somewhat, I would say, unnecessarily effusive reminders of what occurred on September 11th. So it's not as though forgetting, quote unquote, is in the cards. However, what I wanted to briefly comment on, and you can see it in the thumbnail of this video. However, I'll pull it up on my phone for the people watching live, was a photo of an encounter that took place today in lower Manhattan between who else but Joe Biden and Mike Pence. Wow, imagine that. There you go. There's Joe and Mike meeting friendly, giving each other the elbow bump with their stylish masks on. And I want to draw attention to that because it reveals a fundamental cynicism and phoniness at the heart of this current presidential campaign cycle, which is that if you listen to the rhetoric from both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, watch their conventions last month, the main theme is that if the other side wins, guess what, Buster? The country is over. They both are warning of apocalypse. They're warning of the destruction of the United States. Should Trump win or should Biden win? And that's not even an exaggeration. Yeah, there's always been overheated rhetoric or exaggerated warnings as to the dangers that will befall America if the other party happens to get into power. And sometimes those allegations might have some merit around the margins, but now we're really getting into almost a bizarro world where you have Democrats saying that democracy is on the ballot, meaning democracy as we know it will cease to exist if Trump gets 4 more years in office. And Trump, he kind of gets away with it a little more easily, but he very cavalierly and casually says that if Biden wins, the U.S. is basically going to be destroyed. And it's sort of interesting because I don't know if anybody was sentient during the 2016 election, but this was very similar to what was said then. And yeah, have there been shifts in the national psyche from 2016? There have been. But, more or less, democracy is still around. Hence why we're all preparing to vote en masse in less than 2 months. Hence why we had a massive election in 2018 for the Congress. Hence why we still have many municipal and gubernatorial elections that take place regularly. Democracy is not over. The country, while yes, undergoing unrest and riots and what have you, a pandemic, it's not going to just shrivel and die if one of the two major parties happens to win. That's just not the reality, but that is what both parties and their propagandists are trumpeting ad nauseum now to get everybody riled up, to get them motivated to vote, to get the donations pouring in, to get everybody's blood pressure rising so that they can either get into power or retain power. And if the Democratic ticket or the Republican ticket, Trump, Pence, Biden, Harris, if they really believed the incredibly inflammatory things that they say about the quote stakes of the election or the cataclysmic consequences purportedly of the other party winning the presidency, then would you think that they would be willing to just pal around together, even if it's at a 9/11 remembrance ceremony? Like, if I thought that, oh my goodness, if this person wins, if this person is given another 4 years in power, then democracy is over. The country is going to be lying in ruins. It would be immoral for me to chummily greet that person and almost give them like a legitimacy by just having a friendly interaction with them. I mean, would you do that with Hitler? And I'm not saying that Hitler is an apt parallel for Trump or Biden, but I'm saying the ways in which Biden and Trump are being cast by their opponents is almost Hitler-esque. Definitely in terms of how Trump is portrayed. I mean, fascism is just a norm in terms of the dangers that he's alleged to pose. So how could you then go just nonchalantly meet with somebody who represents the grave danger that you're campaigning on the basis of? It doesn't make any sense. And whether it's 9/11 or not, the fact that they could just have this kind of friendly, casual encounter, meaning Pence and Biden, speaks to the fundamental hollowness of the cheap rhetoric that they're now using to get you all riled up. Are there important differences between Biden and Trump? Sure. Does who wins in November have bearing in a significant way on the future trajectory of the country? Yeah, I'll grant that. But these prophecies of catastrophe are a trick. It's a ploy. It is a way to swindle you so that you're fighting online constantly, so that you have tensions constantly boiling over with your friends and family, so that you're constantly drowning in political hyperbole, and hence you tune in to your cable news, you click on Facebook to the latest outrage bait, you refresh maniacally, your various incendiary websites or whatever. It's just not the reality, and this crazed histrionics that all of us are going to be inundated with for the next 2 months, as if we haven't been inundated already in the era of Trump, is it should be recognized for almost the farce that it is. I think more widely, but unfortunately, those who could draw attention to the farcical quality of it also have a stake in perpetuating this crazed hysteria. A stake in terms of their professional prospects, their financial fortunes, And some people are so psychologically broken that they do really believe it. They are in a separate category, but a whole lot of it, I think, is just full out cynical. I mean, Western civilization is over if Trump loses. Give me a break. Democracy is going to be no more, go up in flames if Trump wins. Give me a break. It's just not accurate. But it gets the passions going, and it gets you commenting in all caps on YouTube, and all that means revenue for the people who profit based on this stuff. And this photo of Biden and Pence is just one manifestation of that we are greeted with annually because we're all still remembering 9/11 incessantly. Now, I will say that the George Carlin line, it's a big club and you ain't in it, might be becoming less and less potent of a characterization of sort of elite political society. Is there still a big club that has a whole lot of friendly members who get along swimmingly in private, but then, pantomime these epic battles in public? Yeah, but I also think that there is probably a more fundamental splintering that we're only in the early stages of, that 2016 really ushered in, which makes the whole big club thing less and less relevant. I think it is becoming very slowly obsolete. We're only really in the early stages of that because we're only in the early stages still of imperial decline. And imperial decline means that you can't just, it brings about conditions where people of rival political factions can't just have the classic drink together after work anymore because there's such a seismic rift between them. Like, the communists and the fascists in the mid 20th century couldn't just get together and have a social hour, right? So we probably are on the pathway toward that, which is why you saw so much reverence of the funeral of John McCain when he died. That was sort of almost a last gasp of that in a way. It was notably held in the National Cathedral in D.C. His funeral, because it was a show of force for the big club. I think George W. Bush, I wrote a piece about this at the time, if I'm not mistaken, said he almost had a Freudian slip where he said that, it was all sort of a big game, meaning the McCain running against, he was invoking some kind of analogy, but the idea was that it was the partisan furor and rancor that McCain engaged in was in a sense a game. And it shouldn't be mistaken for the fundamental togetherness that he embodied in a bipartisan fashion. I think you're seeing that beginning to fray. However, for the time being, the club is still around. The clubbiness is exemplified by Biden and Pence having that friendly encounter. And don't be fooled by the crazy rhetoric that's intended to agitate you so that you do things that serve the interests of people who wield power, such as vote, such as watch TV and click on things. You're being manipulated. All right, I have a couple super chats. Boda recommends that I interview somebody. Okay, I'll take that under advisement. Ivan says, last stream, you expressed your considered view that we're not living in a fascist government under Trump. I'm partial to agree, but think that it would be helpful for you to give a definition of fascism. Could you offer a definition? Well, I mean, that's a fair question. However, the fascism is such a amorphous concept now that it almost seems fruitless to offer a definitive definition. And this isn't unique to this current era. You can go read essays by George Orwell from the 40s where he's mocking the socialists for calling the communists fascists, the communists for calling the socialists fascists, the conservatives for calling other factions of conservative fascists, and so on and so forth. So it often seems that fascism is just invoked as a synonym for bad. Are there academic theories floating around that at least claim to have crystallized a coherent definition of fascism? Yeah, those exist, but I almost think it almost feels like often a cop out to just invoke grandiosely this notion of fascism when if you have explanatory resources at your disposal, you should be able to detail bad things that exist within a polity without resorting to cheap labels like fascism, which to me, and this partially explains my reluctance to offer a comprehensive definition, will inevitably harken back to the 1930s. That's how fascism became such an outsized presence in the common mind. So that's always going to be effectively the precedent that's invoked when you use the term. And therefore, I don't think that it's really worth spending a whole lot of time detailing a definition. Now, could there be some politician who comes along and has an actual program that could be conceivably reminiscent of fascism? Possibly, but they're not really on the agenda right now. So why belabor the point? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into this impromptu stream. And we'll do it again in short order. Stay safe. Stay cool. You know the drill. Bye-bye.